Hi, good morning. I'm going to try and make this a bit conversational. I had something that I wanted to share with you, but maybe I'll cut that short. We'll get more into questions. Is that all right? Okay. So the idea was that, is this too loud? Okay. We talk a little bit about leadership. And I thought I would begin with sharing a recent study that I came across. Just to get us a little bit focused on what the world expects of leaders, how leaders get hired, and who are the ones who actually perform. It's a fascinating study. So this is something which was done by 4 researchers in the US, focused on Fortune 500 companies. And it's a 10-year study, which was codenamed the CEO Genome Study, okay? Because I think they were really trying to figure out what distinguished people who got hired as CEOs from those who didn't get hired, and then those who got hired what distinguished the performers from the non-performers. So like a two-stage thing, and 10 years because they first studied the data of about 2,200 candidates to try and see, what was the distinctive pattern between those who got hired and those who didn't get hired, and then they followed the careers of those who got hired in terms of the actual performance. So fascinating, and I recommend it to you. It came out in HBR in the I think the May-June 2017 issue. But some interesting tidbits, and then I'll come to the crux of their findings. So one of the things they talk about is, there's this mythological CEO, which is this 6-foot-tall white male who is going to be leading these Fortune 500 companies. He's been to an Ivy League school. He is very confident about his performance and all that kind of stuff. In reality, none of the elements of this myth were found to be true. Only about 7% of the CEOs were actually met this typology of the white male, 6-foot-tall, Ivy League guy. So, just shows that even in terms of the outer characteristics, there are lots of myths. But interestingly, they also found that boards prefer charismatic extroverts. So when they're hiring, if you're an extrovert, you're more likely to be hired. But they found that actually introverts are delivered slightly better performance than the extroverts did in reality. So, check. They also found that degrees had nothing to do with performance. So, you went to Howard or Stanford, it didn't really matter. Here's another interesting one. So boards tend to like high confidence candidates. And if you exhibit high confidence, then you have double the chance of getting hired than somebody who does not show that confidence. But in performance, there was no advantage that these guys had. Okay, so fun stuff. But anyway, coming back to the study findings about performance. So they basically said there are 4 things which distinguish high-performing CEOs from those who are not so well-performing. The first one is deciding with speed and conviction. So people who were described as decisive were 12 times more likely to be high-performing than those who were not. And this does not necessarily mean that the guys who took great decisions. It doesn't mean that. It's just that they were quicker to take decisions, and they might make mistakes, but people found that over a period of time, the dithering, the indecisiveness was usually worse for performance than a few mistakes. So I think that's one clear thing that came out. The second thing that they said made a difference is engaging for impact. And this is something that I want all the women in the room who are looking for leadership to think a little bit about. Because they said once CEOs set a clear course for business, they must get buy-in. from all stakeholders and employees. So, so you're in the role, have been given a carte blanche by your board, you go and take a decision to set yourself on a course. It is still very, very critical not to just get focused on the results, but also to get buy-in from stakeholders, because there are likely to be ups and downs in your journey, and you need the support of those stakeholders as you go forward. So they found that people who did that, who were able to identify the stakeholders' point of view well, and to engage with them to make sure that they were on board with the strategy, did much better in terms of performance. The third point, they said, is adapting proactively. And again, I don't have to tell you this. I think basically the study findings said CEOs who excel at adaptability are 6.7 times more likely to succeed. 6.7 times. That's incredible. Dealing with things which are, this is, when you say adaptability, it is really dealing with things which are not in the playbook. Dealing with stuff that you cannot predict. Dealing with things which are not, which you did not anticipate. Dealing with ambiguity, dealing with things which get thrown at you. So if you have to be, if you're somebody who can deal, who can adapt yourself to whatever gets thrown at you, then you're more likely to succeed than somebody who's not able to do it. Finally, but before that, one more interesting tidbit. So adaptable CEOs spend significantly more time focused on the long term. So, as a CEO, as a leader in whatever role that you're in today, you obviously have to think about the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And you can, if you're not somebody who's adaptable, chances are you will get bogged down by the here and now if you come across something which you did not anticipate. Whereas if you're somebody who's able to adapt, then you can continue to keep your focus on the long term, and while still dealing with the short and the medium term. So I think that's one of the big things that they found. Finally, and this I don't have to tell you, but it's good to always remind yourself that delivering reliably is key. You have to have the ability to deliver consistently and reliability all the time, because this is obviously the most powerful of the 4 behaviors they're talking about. You can't, you can do everything else, but if you're not delivering the business results, you're not going to get anywhere. So why am I telling you this when I'm talking to women? It's just to sort of remind us all that at the end of the day, we're talking about leadership. It's not about women, it's about leadership. And what is it that, what studies like this do is to remind us of what we need to focus on when we are thinking about either getting hired into a higher leadership role, and if we are there, then what do we need to do about it? So coming back to the women in the room who are looking for some, some, I guess, points of reflection, because if you're in the room, you're already a leader. You know how you got here. You perhaps know how you're going to get to the next place, but some things for you to reflect on. I thought I'd give you 4 mantras. And my 4 mantras are, which you should wake up in the morning and remember. First one is, I can. Okay? I can. It is a very important one. And I'll go through a little bit of each of the 4 in detail. The second one is, I can and I will prepare for it. I will prepare for my next role. The third one is, I can, I will prepare, and I will ask for that role. I will put up my hand and ask for that role. And the fourth one is, I can, I will prepare, I will ask for that role, and I will never give up. Okay? The 4 mantras. So let me get into it a little bit more, and then we can stop and you can ask questions. So I think the first thing is, we must believe in ourselves. We have to believe in ourselves, we have to trust ourselves, and I think for a lot of women, we have to overcome perfectionism. Because, we've all been brought up to believe that, being a perfectionist is a great thing. It is, to a certain level. But too much focus on perfectionism can actually lead you into indecisiveness, for example. You cannot, when you are trying to deal with the real world, you cannot wait to get 100% of the information you need to take a decision. You are going to have to work with 80% of the information, right? So it's really, really quite important that you think about this. But in any case, the thing that you must remind yourself every morning, that if you are in the room, you deserve to be there. You are not there by happenstance. You are there because you deserve to be there and you can aspire to the next level. Okay, so that's your mantra 1. Your second mantra, I can and I must prepare. I think often, and I think our early careers actually lull us into thinking that's what will happen. We think that because we are doing a great job, I'm the best performer in the team, why will I not be promoted? And it does happen in the first, 2-3 role changes that happen to you. When you join as an associate, you become whatever, the next level, and the next level. If you're the best performer on the team, you will get promoted. You begin to think that that's how things will happen. But, if you've been in a job for 10 years, or 12 years, or 15 years, you have to begin to realize that ain't going to happen. You're going to have to be very good at what you do. So being good at what you do is a necessary condition. And I will use a mathematical term here, but it's not sufficient. You've got to prepare yourself. And the preparation is not in terms of your technical delivery. You're obviously good at it. You're doing whatever. You also have the potential, because you're somebody who's sort of trained well, and hopefully the organization has invested in you, and you know what you're doing. I'm taking all that for granted. You have to prepare to be able to get onto the next level in terms of understanding all the stakeholders' expectations of the next level. So I'll tell you a little bit of a personal story here. I was the first female in any of the big accounting firms, or actually for that matter, any of the big professional firms, to be made a partner. Don't clap. It's not such a big thing. But whatever, 35 years ago when I made partner, I suppose it was a big thing. The thing I didn't realize, and I got it about a year later than I thought I should have got it. But what I didn't realize, and I was really upset the year I didn't make partner, and Savita's in the room and she knows I was so upset. But the thing I didn't realize is that you're reaching into the next level, Certainly the senior leadership levels, but sometimes even the middle level. It's a little bit about, it's of course about your performance and your potential, but it is also about what I will call clubbability. Okay? You're entering a club, and if the current club members are uncomfortable with you, you're not going to make it. You can say it's unfair, you can cry hoarse about it, you can do whatever you like with it, but it is a club. And so, does that mean you change yourself and you become like them? No, I'm not for a minute recommending it. I'm asking you to recognize it. I'm asking you to recognize that it is a club, and you must understand stakeholders' perception of what does it take for them to trust someone like you. So it's really quite important that you understand who's going to take a decision on that next level. You need to build alliances. You need to identify the guys who are going to be, and I'm saying guys because, it's likely to be mostly men, but there may be some women also who are likely to be detractors. There will be those who have unconscious biases, saying, this is a man's world, how is she going to cope? And, they may be very, very benevolent, paternalistic type people who will do this. They're not trying to be mean to you, but, they think that it's difficult for you to stay at night and walk the halls to make sure everything is okay. So there'll be all sorts of people. You need to understand them, and you need to engage with them. You cannot sit in your chair and assume that because you're so good at your work and because your clients all thought you did a brilliant job, you're going to make the next level. So you must prepare. Second mantra, okay? We'll move on. Third mantra, I prepare and I ask for it. So you've done everything. You're good at your work, you think you have the potential, you've mapped your stakeholders, but chances are the people who prepared the slate for selecting the next level haven't even thought about you. Pretty high probability. in certain organizations, and some organizations not so. Some organizations where they are deliberately trying to ensure that the slate is equal, this won't happen. But in some organizations, it can happen. And especially if you're a pioneer in your organization, if you're one of the first few senior women, it is more likely to happen because, that's how it is. So you must ask for it. You must, with adequate time in hand, not the day the position gets announced, not after the position gets announced, you must go to whoever's going to prepare the slate and say, do you think I'm ready for this? And I believe I am, and I'd like to try out for this role. Now, it might sound a bit too much, it might sound aggressive, but believe you me, in most organizations, there's at least a 50% chance that you'll get missed out in that first slate unless you ask. Now, it doesn't mean that if you get asked, you will definitely win the job, but at least you have the potential to be at the table, right? Which you wouldn't have otherwise. So, and the other thing is that if after you ask and you don't get it, you've got to not feel rejected and traumatized. You've got to figure out how you deal with it the next time round. So it's really, really quite positive to not allow negative thoughts to disturb you more than for one evening, because you have to really get on with it. You have to, because if you're going to be negative and switched off, your performance will suffer, your perceptions will suffer, and it's really not good. I mean, I know it's human nature, but we're talking about what can you do, so here are things you can do. And finally, the last mantra, I prepare, I ask, and I never give up. I keep trying, and I will get there. So that's it. I hope the 4 mantras are helpful to you, and happy to take any questions. Yeah, so take a look at it. It's come out in HBR May-June 2017 issue. It's called What Sets Successful CEOs Apart, or the CEO Genome Project. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just connect your mantra with the study that you have mentioned. So as we see that, decisiveness, engaging with impact, and all these things, this is very much inherent in a woman actually. If you see a mother, if you see the family or the organization as a single nation, right? So why do you think that most of the women are not CEO? I mean, if you see the ratio and all, and is it because of your third mantra that the third mantra that I'll ask for it? They don't ask for it, and that's why most of the women, though they have all those qualities, but they're not able to, get that position.
So I think, and I'll sort of talk from my experience, I think it's 2 things. One is, yes, women do not project themselves as that potential leader, and they don't ask for it. So it's both things. One is the projection and the other one is asking. But it's also because of a lot of unconscious biases in the selectors. So as I told you, the boards are selecting people for what they think is going to make a great CEO. The boards or the recruitment boards, whatever you like. So they have a particular vision of this person they want to hire. And typically that vision is of this man who is very charismatic, who is very decisive, who's got a great presence, and they tend to, who is very confident, so they tend to be unconsciously looking for this man. And, they're not even thinking about the women on the team, often. So when they begin to think about the women on the team, they still have this perception of the stereotypical leader, which you have to really break against it to, almost force them into taking off the blinkers and looking broader. Some of it will happen environmentally, but some of it you have to do through engagement and demonstrating that you're worth your consideration.
How do you break it actually?
Exactly. Will this ever be happen? Means when you raise this image that whenever they are going to look for the CEO, it has to be a man?
So they're not consciously thinking that. Let's be fair to the guys who are not in the room. I don't think they're consciously looking for a man. I'm saying it's a very unconscious bias. I don't know, have you ever had any unconscious bias training? Any of you? So I suggest you look it up again on the internet, and there's a Harvard professor called Banerjee who does a lot of this work, but I'm sure there are a lot of other people who do it also. You can go in and take a test. You will find you have your own unconscious biases, and I wouldn't be surprised if for 80% of the women in the room, your perception of a leader is the same. Yeah? So it's conditioning, it's social programming, it's having fewer role models. So, for example, about 5% of the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are female. So obviously the image that comes to mind is that of a man, right? So you actually have to, so it isn't as if people are necessarily consciously thinking of a man. It's what happens. There's an unconscious bias. So organizations who are very progressive are trying to crack that by doing unconscious bias training. They are doing it by trying to make sure, for example, I used to ask for a slate. Whenever we had to do promotions, I would say, I want to see at least 2 good women candidates on it. If I got a slate without women candidates, I would send it back. I would say, I'm not asking you to hire a woman, but I want you to see them. So I think a lot of organizations are doing this institutionally, and that helps a lot. So I think organizations have to do a lot. But here right now, I was very deliberately, because I was pretty sure I would be talking to a room full of women and not men, although Nidhi told me there'll be a few men. I did not talk about what you should be doing as an organization. There's a whole bunch of things you should be doing as an organization, and by the way, for your own teams, to ensure that the unconscious bias does not play. But you have to do this. I'll give you an example, another story. For the little team I was managing, this is 15 years back, I had a partner who was responsible for a team, and we had a secondment opportunity for somebody with about 5 to 8 years of experience to go to Switzerland for 6 months. And I asked him to give me a few names, and he came back with 3 male names. And this team had 50% women. So I'm saying, so Prashant, why are there no women on it? And he said, this one's got a 5-year-old and this one's got a baby. And I said, are you going to bring up their children? Can you please go back and look at your performance thing and give me a slate which you believe will happen, and let them figure out, let them say no. Why would you want to take that decision for them? So he did, and he's a lovely man. He is not at all anti women or any such thing. He went back and he presented me with another slate. And then I told him, okay, rank order these people in terms of who you think will benefit most from this opportunity. And he put this woman on top. Now this woman on top had a 2-month-old baby. And I said, okay, ask her. And he said, she'll say no. I said, no, but ask her as if you don't expect a no answer. And then we'll go from there. And she said yes. And so he said, how are you going to manage? She said, well, my husband can't travel with me, but I'll ask my mother-in-law to travel with me. And I have to tell you, it was a bloody pain, because we had to get, do extra work to get a visa for her mother and all that, mother-in-law. But the thing is that she was very enthusiastic about it. So you can't decide for her what she's going to do, right? So I think it's those type of things that come into play, and we all have to be very conscious of it.
I'd like to ask another question. When you cited that study that came out, and you said that the ones who make more successful CEOs, as per the study, are the ones who are not so aggressive and not extroverts and tend to be a little bit more introverts.
No. I didn't say that. I said there was a slightly better performance from the introverts than extroverts. And the reason I thought it was interesting is that, all of us, and myself included, you tend to want to hire the person with a higher energy in a discussion. It's natural, okay? And what the study is telling us is that in terms of performance, if there's any difference at all, it's in favor of the introverts.
But also I think that
we sort of loosely interpret the word introvert. Introverts can be high energy when it comes to performance, and they also can be aggressive.
Yeah, that's true also.
But my point was this, that if I am too aggressive and come out and ask for a particular role, and then somebody else has this in mind, I should be looking at somebody who's a little bit more reserved and takes more decisions, takes the time over.
So don't confuse aggression with assertiveness, please. So, saying that I'm looking for career advancement, not aggressive. I mean, it's the way you say it. You don't go and hammer at somebody's door and say, I want your seat. You basically say, I'm trying to figure out my next career move and help me think through how I'm going to get it. Right? That's how I would ask for it. I wouldn't say, I'm the best candidate.
Although a lot of your male colleagues will do that.
A lot of your male colleagues will.
They will actually walk into their boss's room and say that their boss is looking at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but personally,
very easily
yes, but personally speaking, I did have a similar experience where I did travel with a 3-month-old baby, and I took my maid along. I was part of a research group, and going into villages and everything, and everybody came, are you sure? I said, yes. As long as you let my maid travel along with me, my child will go and I will do it.
Yeah, exactly.
There are opportunities that are made available.
So I think that's the issue. The issue is that people are making decisions for you. But you should make. And sometimes you might decide that, listen, if this thing is in Kalahandi and there's an outbreak of Kala there or something, I don't want to take my child into it, so I will not travel. Fair enough. But you take the decision and not someone else for you.
And there also seems to be the barrier to women reaching the top is also very different between an organization which already has some precedents and where it is completely new. In fact, there I think the issue is all about a bit of a change management also that they need to get into. So
it can cut both ways. In today's age, today's world, if there are no women in leadership, then there's a lot of pressure on organizations to try and at least bring that one token woman there. So if you're in that position, they don't exhibit it.
No, there is no pressure coming from, because there isn't any such rule as such for many such organizations. So maybe.
No, it can happen. It can happen. And I'm kidding. I think, there is the perception issue that most boards have to deal with also. And, but yeah, you're right. It is a problem.
I will share an issue I faced in one such organization where I was entering at mid-level, not top, but mid-level. That organization didn't have any women there. So when my boss decided to take me, the first concern that he had is, I don't even have a ladies' toilet here. So if I take you, I'll have to make one. So maybe that was a minor issue, but maybe for someone else.
No, it is not a minor issue. It's a big issue. I've never used dancing.
This is 10 years back, so that time it wasn't that much of an issue. But maybe these are very small concerns, but it can be a detriment. If we have an equal choice in a man, maybe it can be an easier decision for the person to take the man rather than me.
We've all been, those of us who were my age, we've all been to places where we have to sit in the car and go somewhere or we have managing directors of companies telling us to use their tools because you cannot, they don't have a female loop.
It still happens, especially in the exhibition industry. All of us know working on site. Those are never punched.
Exactly.
And I have had to take my female clients exactly the same.
Yeah.
Put them in a car, take them to a hotel or a restaurant in Connaught Place and tell them.
Also, they have this very peculiar situation where the women's room
Are locked. And you have to go ask for the key.
Yes.
Everybody knows that this
So
woman
we are not going to convert this into a conversation on Swachh Bharat, but Swachh Bharat should help because at least you'll have more.
No, half of the office knows that she wants to go to bath.
Which is fine because men don't care, they'll go in front of everyone. So it doesn't matter.
I faced a situation last week in a big client's office, and I asked everybody around,
कराने से मैडम उस वाले में ना कोई नहीं जाता, उसमें चले जाओ, पर लेडीज लू तो कोई नहीं. It happens.
No, but you know, I think you also have to, again, it's something that we all have to get over. When you find yourself in a situation like that, you should ask one of the men to come and stand guard outside and you use the men's loo. I mean, you know, it's fine. It's a natural bodily function you have in body.
Yeah, so I think we also need to develop some comfort in having, that confidence to.
I think it's more about developing a thicker skin.
Both.
Yeah, please.
I also wanted your, views on a certain situation which comes up, especially if you're not at the top level, but you're maybe in a place where you're looking at, the next promotion or something where this men have the opportunity to go for dinner out together, or smoke out together, and they have, that is where there is a comfort for the juniors, where they make this mental selection probably that these are the candidates which we can look for. Whereas we as women, despite being equally qualified, are not in that comfort zone where we can, chat, or maybe we go out for drinks or stuff like that, and I'm not sure that how that situation could be handled.
So I think it's a very good question. I think we all go through this trying to decide what to do in a situation like this.
Yeah.
So I would have, and there are no rights or wrong about it, but I would have two things to share with you out of my own experience. I think the first one is that, don't even try to compete with the men about drinking together and, hanging out together, because, you're unlikely to be an ardent drinker as the next male candidate for that role. So don't try it, it's not worth it. It'll just make you sick. But I think the other piece I would say is that you really should also be completely standoffish. You can't sort of say, okay, I used to feel that a lot of decisions are made in locker rooms, and which is sort of my way of saying, the formal meetings, when people come into the formal meetings, the decision is already made. So if you haven't been part of the informal networking, you will miss out on having your views heard, or you will miss out on people forming an impression of you. So you have to find ways in which you are able to connect with people in an informal way. And it doesn't have to be, going from pub to pub, but you might have to go out drinking sometimes. You may have to find ways to connect with this lot in some other way, but you have to find that. You have to find it. Because without that, you're right. You are not, if you think you can just go into a boardroom and make an impression, it won't happen.
Yeah, it's a very, especially, I would like to share this, that I found it extra uncomfortable and difficult because after I went, I got divorced. And then it became, kind of double sensitive situation, going out in the evening for a dinner, or, with all male, because obviously there are less females in the queue. So
I understand. I think,
I want everyone to know that these things would come up.
So I think it cuts both ways. I think it's our own comfort, and I think you also need to trust your gut. If you're not feeling comfortable, if you're not feeling secure, don't do it. Do not put yourself in a position where you are feeling insecure. It's not worth it. Okay? But most of the time, it's social programming. You've got to get over it. And, just as you're uncomfortable, the men are uncomfortable. Because by the you, they cannot be boys, right? Yeah. Or at least until they've had 4 drinks, they cannot be boys. So you have to, some of it is your own. But also, you don't have to stay with them the whole evening. You can spend the first 1 hour.
Everybody will good-naturedly laugh and, heave a sigh of relief and saying, okay, now she's gone. But, it is what it is. But do not go with a gang of people you're uncomfortable with. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
But tell me, is it very far-fetched to say this? Because many of us feel this is one place where we get disadvantaged, is the post-office get-togethers. So organizations which are trying to embrace gender diversity, should this come up as a rule that, you shouldn't have too many of those, because that's one area we all feel we get disadvantaged in.
If you make a rule like that, it will definitely happen.
It's a social gathering.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, no, I think it's, what you can do is organizations can try and make events happen at a time where people can be informal. So for example, a lot of organizations like my own, we used to have offsites where the focus would be on team building and not on business alone. So there you have an opportunity to hang out with people, but you can't have rules which say, none of you are allowed to get together after 7 o'clock. I mean, how can you do that?
No, what I mean is the office get-together should be at a time which is applicable.
It is not an office or to get together most of the time. It's the boss calling his immediate reports and saying, guys, let's go out for a drink.
See, it is much better after you're on the job, on the top level, but second tier. And I have had experiences where, the next day morning I heard that, we discussed it yesterday evening and this is the decision we just
No, that's what I meant, that a lot of stuff gets discussed. No, so you have to find, as I said, you have to find your own way to deal with it, but you have to deal with it. You have to.
Digressing from the main topic happening here, there was another point you touched upon, which was more about being part of a club. Like you go to a certain level and then the talent part or how technically sound you are doesn't make a difference or a huge difference anymore.
I said it is a necessary but not sufficient.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of a granted thing that you obviously must be doing a good job that you needed that far. But then to reach to the next level, you probably need to break into one of the clubs. Where you said that you have to recognize it, you probably don't have to go along with it. But then, where does that recognition help? And if you don't go along with it, then how do you actually break into it?
So I think what I was trying to say is that people have to be able to feel comfortable around you. If they continue to feel uncomfortable with you, no matter how good you are, you're not going to get that job. Right? So how do you build comfort will depend on each individual. So you need to identify the stakeholders, you need to build bridges with them, you need to figure out how to connect with them. It's a task which you will do like any other task you do, but you have to map this thing out. It's not, to say that, I'm doing everything I can in my job and that should get me to the next level. Most of the time, at a particular level, it won't happen.
And when the ideologies or perhaps the way of operation is entirely different, how do you find then those common bridges?
So if the ideology is completely different, you should not be in that organization. Why would you want to be in senior management of an organization where your ideologies don't match? You shouldn't be there. I mean, if you want the top slot in an organization, there has to be something there which matches what you want to do. There can be one or two things you don't like, but it can't be 80% of stuff that you don't like, right? You should, if this is your conclusion, then you should walk out and look for a job with somewhere where you can actually find that, where you feel more comfortable.
And if you're talking about, am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
What I essentially want to ask here is that X person is deserving of that, Y person is also equally deserving of it. It's about someone, like you said, making someone comfortable. Maybe that's not always the case, making someone comfortable. Some are better at being more genuine, some perhaps not so much. Some are, they find it a lot easier to, maybe it's not the right word, but for lack of a better word at the moment, manipulate into thinking, succeed into manipulate you into thinking something else. So is the solution that you continue being yourself, or is the solution that you too maybe take that path?
So I would not recommend you to be anything other than yourself. I think at the end of the day you have to live with yourself. So please always be authentic. It does not help you in the long run to be someone else. And that's the reason I said, don't try and outdrink the man, don't try. I mean, you're not that person, right? So I think at the same time, you have to find out how to make the people who you have to work with comfortable that you are the right person for the job. And you're going to have to do this person by person. You have to identify, suppose there are 5 people who are going to decide who fills this role. You're going to have to look at each person and you'll have to try and understand and sometimes it helps to get a coach. So you should either formally or informally ask for a coach and try and do this mapping. Because it is completely critical for you to do this. In India, we don't actually use coaches very well. Whereas, most of the Western world, institutions will appoint coaches for you and you can otherwise individually get coaches. But, if you are you have no idea where to begin, then I would strongly recommend a coach. Because it doesn't mean that you don't know what to do, but it means that, you can use some help in trying to figure out how to do this mapping and identifying how you're going to talk with these people. But please don't be inauthentic. Okay, I should really stop and let the next speaker speak. So unless there's a last question.
Actually, there is. I want to ask about performance parameters.
Mm-hmm.
When you went through this study about the CEO genome study
Yeah.
project. So what about performance parameters for women? Are they looking at something else entirely?
No.
No, the board doesn't change.
No. Performance parameters, performance actually is, so in the case of Fortune 500 companies, it's the market and it's the results, right? I mean, for a CEO, it's your share price and your results. So, I mean, that doesn't change. Performance is the same. The only thing is that normally they will look at short-term, medium-term, long-term type of thing, but it's the same. There will be no difference in terms of men and women. No. I mean, not consciously, not unconsciously, no. Okay? Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.